Hey guys, it's Mark from Hallmark Pool Supplies. In this video, I want to show you guys how we can take apart a multiport, fix, repair, or rebuild this multiport. This is a 714 multiport top mount on a HAYWARD filter. I also have videos that I've made on replacing the key assembly. When we replace key assemblies, it is the whole assembly, and basically we call this drop and go. We just remove the screws, put the new one in, and we're done. But a lot of times we don't have to replace the whole entire key assembly. We can actually take this apart. We can fix, we can lube, we can replace certain parts without having to replace it. So therefore, we can get out with a repair a whole lot cheaper than replacing the whole thing. So this is going to be, like I said, for a 714 top mount valve. And if you guys are looking to just drop and go and replace a key assembly only, I have made videos in regards to replacing a key assembly on a top mount filter as well as a side mount filter. And I will post links down below on those videos if you guys want to check that out. So the first thing we want to do when we take this apart to service it is we want to get ourselves a small flathead screwdriver. There's a pin going through the handle here, and we want to tap this pin out. And when we tap the pin out, we'll be able to remove the handle. But before we do so, I've got the filter in filter position. This is very important that when we take this apart, that we're also going to be putting it back together in the exact same position. So right now we've got the handle in the filter position. We're going to take the pin, we're going to tap the pin out, and now we've got the handle out. And the reason I had mentioned what I just mentioned was if we were to go back and put it back, and we put it back this way, we're backwards. And we don't want to do that. So it is very important, if we're going to take it off in the filter position, we make sure that we have it in that position so that when we go to put it back together, as long as we put it back together in that position, we're going to be correct. So we'll set that to the side. And now we've got our shaft on the diverter, and we've got our Teflon spacer that's located inside, and we're going to remove this, and we want to inspect it, make sure that it's good. And a lot of times these get wore, they crack, they break. If this is missing or completely wore, then it doesn't give the handle lift when we're making our rotation, and it is very important to make sure that this is good. So if we have to, we can replace this. I'm going to set that to the side. Now we're going to unscrew. Remember, we've got this pointing in the filter position, and there is a notch right here, and I'll explain why that's there. We're now going to remove the screws, and as you can see, the top of the multiport has lifted because it is under compression with the spring, and this way we're going to be able to push and lift this up, and we take it off just as such. And then this is the top, and of course there's an O-ring here that's going to be on the bottom here. We want to make sure we inspect this, and this is good, and if it's good, we can lubricate this and put it back on. If for any reason as we go through this, if there's any parts that you need, I'm going to be able to show you guys, because I'm going to have all this on my website, and I'll post links down below for you guys that need anything. But we're going to set that to the side. And now, if we look, we haven't touched anything, we haven't rotated anything. You'll see there's a window here. And this is where the handle comes, and this is the window. We are in the filter position. If we were to take this and rotate it, and we put it back together like this, we're not going to be in the right position. So we want to make sure that when we put this back, we're going to put this here. And for good reference, just remember the window is where the filter is, and the window is also pointing right here to your pressure gauge. So this way, when we go to put it back, we're not going to be doing this. We're going to be putting it back exactly as you see it. So now we're going to remove this. This is the body of the multiport or the hub, and we're going to take this and we're going to show you how we can rebuild and replace these parts. I'm going to set the diverter here. We have a spacer, we have a spring, and then we have another metal spacer on the bottom. And so basically this is very important because this is what's giving us our compression as we push down to rotate. And if this gets wore or it's damaged or it's broke, you can also replace that. So basically we can replace everything here. Now, when we go to the shaft, let's just say for an example, you're running the system and everything's working good, but it's leaking around here. If this is the case, that would be pertaining to the O-ring and the shaft that's on the shaft of the diverter itself. Now, as we hold this up, you're going to notice there's a spacer and then there's an O-ring. The spacer is always on the top, the O-ring's on the bottom, and on this particular valve, the 714, it has been remodified. The old valves did not have a second gasket or O-ring on the bottom. It only had a spacer and an O-ring on the top, and the shaft was smooth. The new ones, they're double grooved. And just remember, you've got a spacer at the top, O-ring at the bottom, and then the next one, it's just the O-ring itself. So when you buy the O-ring kit with spacer, it will come with two and a spacer. If you guys have an older design and it only has the one, then you're just going to have an extra O-ring because that's just the way they sell it today. On the bottom side of this is the gasket. It is very important that that is seated properly and this gasket is in good shape because if it's not seated down properly, you can have water leaking out of the backwash and it's not sealing. You cannot replace this. You have to replace the whole diverter. So you replace this diverter. This is already factory glued and it's on the bottom of the diverter as you see here. So we can set this to the side. Now, let's just say besides a leak, you have a valve that's operating great, but it's hard to turn and you can't turn it very well. We can actually get some lube, like Jack's Lube from Hayward. We put some on our finger. Once we've inspected and we make sure this is good, we can actually lube all of this in here. And by doing that, that's going to allow inside here where the shaft comes through, it's going to be lubricated, and this is going to allow this to rotate and turn so that it's nice and smooth. Sometimes these dry out and there's a lot of friction and it doesn't want to rotate very well. So by doing that, it just makes it easier and it's going to make that rotate nicely. And we've got the O-rings and the shaft in good condition. We're good to go. But all of these parts, everything from even the label to the handle, to the pin, to the Teflon ring, to the screws that go around the top, to the O-ring that goes on the lid of the multiport, the shaft, diverter itself, the spring, the spacers. You can buy all these parts separate. There's a lot of people that just don't want to mess with rebuilding and doing all this. They just buy this and drop it in and then they're done. But you'll spend more money if all you need is a O-ring or maybe a spring or maybe replace the handle or the Teflon spacer. It would be much easier to do that and you can get out fixing your multiport and have it operating properly, no leaks, and everything's running good for a fraction of the cost. So at this point in time, we're going to put everything back together, and what we're going to do, the first thing is we're going to take our shaft and we're going to make sure, like I said, that everything is good. If we've had to replace this or if this is good, we don't have to replace it. First thing we're going to do is put our metal spacer in. Now these don't typically have to be replaced because it's metal, it doesn't really wear that much, but the spring, if it loses compression, and if you guys can take this and compress this in your hand, like I'm doing here, you would want to replace it, but as you can see, I can't push this down. That's because this is a new spring and this is actually really tight, and this is exactly what we want. A spring that's loose or weak is not going to allow any lift or turn on the multiport itself. So now we're going to put the spring on, and then we're going to put the top spacer on, just like so. And then we'll walk over here and we will be able to put this in the multiport. And keep in mind, we're going to have it lined up so that the window is facing the pressure gauge. And we already know when we put the handle on, we're going to be putting it on this way because it's in the filter position. At the same time, we want to check, make sure everything's good here, nice and clean. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to check our O-ring. Like I said, you can lube it, make sure there's no trash, make sure everything is cleaned. and we're going to put this on. And at the same time, we already lubed the shaft with the O-rings and the spacer. We can also put a little lube in here if you'd like. And then now we are ready to take this and put this back on the multiport. So when we come over here, we're going to notice that it says filter, and we want to line it up, and we're going to put it back down so that this is facing filter. And you'll also see that our notch right here is going to line up with the notch, and the manufacturer makes it as such so people don't turn around and spin this in the wrong direction. So this way we're facing right, and we know that the window is facing the pressure gauge. So we're going to put this down. Now, because this is spring loaded, you can see when we push down on this, it's very, very tight. So that tells me I've got good compression. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my screws, and we're going to put our screws in. And typically what I like to do is I put these in by hand because I don't want to use a screw gun and strip the screws out, because if you do that, then you're going to be replacing the whole multiport. To get started, because it's under compression and it'll be a little easier, I'm just going to start with a drill and just kind of snug it to pull it in. And all we're going to do is put it in side to side. So we're pushing this down evenly. And now that I've got a good bite and it's catching, I will now take my handheld screwdriver, and we're just going to come down and we're going to snug it just all the way around a little bit, and we're going to draw it in evenly. You don't want to put it in tight all the way around the first time, because you could pinch the gasket or it doesn't sit straight. Then you're going to have a leak. I've got it snug, and now I'm going to go around and I'm just going to tighten it up, and then I'll inspect it, and I'll look and make sure that nothing's in there, that it's not pinched, it's nice and tight. We've got it tightened down, and now we're going to be ready to put in our Teflon bearing. And you can also take the Teflon bearing, and we can put lube on this, on here, and down in here, and set that in place, and that'll be there. And our handle is going to ride and be on top of that, and that also acts as a spacer to give lift when we push down, because what is happening when we take a handle and we push down, it is actually lifting the diverter up, so that as we rotate and drop the handle, then it goes back down. When you don't have lift, or this is stiff or dry, and you lift, it's trying to lift, but when you rotate, you're dragging, and that will wear the gasket out, and that will cause leaks. And that's why we want to make sure that we have good compression on the spring and everything is lubricated, and you can go in here and replace the parts that you need without having to replace the whole key assembly. So now we're going to put our handle on. Like I said, we want to make sure we're lined up in filter, because that's how we took it off, facing your pressure gauge. Now we're going to take our pin, we're going to line it up, and then you get your little hammer here and just tighten it and tap it back in place. And then what I like to do is I like to just push down, and you should have good compression like you see here, and this should rotate nice and smooth. And when you lube it, this is going to move very nice and easy. But if you don't fix the spring or the Teflon bearing or the handle itself, then you don't get that lift and it drags. So you want to make sure you've got good rotation and that this has got good compression. And now we've got the multiport done and rebuilt. And so at this time, we would turn the system on and we would check everything and make sure that there's no leaks, that everything is good, it's tight, and then you guys are good to go. So now that we've got the multiport rebuilt, what I've done is I've taken the time to lay these parts out. We'll go through them in order. So this way, if you guys need anything, I will post links down below, and you can just correlate the link to the number if it's a specific part that you need. And if you guys have any questions, definitely contact me or comment down below. I'll be glad to help. So first we have the label plate, and that's for you guys that need a label plate. Maybe it's wore and you can't read it and you need a new one. We've got a pin that goes into the handle. We've also got the Teflon spacer that goes up on top. We've got the actual top that you see here, along with the O-ring that goes here, if you guys need that. I've also got the set of screws that go into the top of the multiport. We've also got the diverter, along with the springs and spacers for the diverter, and the spacer and the O-rings that go on the shaft of the diverter. And then I've also got the 714 valve, which is basically consisting of all of this. If you guys want to just put it in, drop and go. But if you are rebuilding, you can get these parts. We also have the lube. And I will post links down below according to their numbers, so you guys will be able to get a quick reference if there's something that you need. If you have any questions, comment down below or contact me. I will be glad to help. And as always, remember us at Hallmark Pool Supplies for all your pool needs. I do appreciate you guys watching. Definitely hit the like and subscribe button, especially for future content. And my name is Mark. I'll see you guys on the next video.